I don't know. Shoot, I guess I do know. Good morning, everybody. Hi, my name is Laura Hunter. I am the owner of Drop the Leash Dog Training. I am here with Celeste Gagnon today. Celeste teaches classes with me. And we are here today to talk about the social life and social interactions of dogs. So today's talk was kind of inspired by my puppy students because as everybody knows, dog trainers in lockdown. So my puppy students, dedicated people that they are, have been out trying to do their own social play groups with, of course, the correct number of people and everybody socially distanced, masking. But they have had many questions for me because I haven't been there. So I thought this would be a good topic for this morning, especially with everybody, having new dogs. And I think it's something that I kind of taken for granted, that people would recognize what was going on with dogs who were interacting and playing. But then I had to start thinking that we spend a lot of our time here, Celeste, you and I, just normalizing behaviors for a lot of people. So maybe we need to be more descriptive and more detailed when we're talking about how dogs socially interact. So yeah, so inspired by our puppy clients, and what I did was I put down some questions. We're going to include some questions that they have been asking me the last couple of weeks. But if any of you out there who are listening have questions as well, please just post them in the comments and they will get to Celeste and we can hopefully answer them. So it is a big priority for people to dog play, to know that their dog can go out into the world and play with other dogs. But as I said, a lot of people don't understand dog play and don't always know what to look for. So we're going to get into that. It's important that owners feel comfortable when their dogs are out there playing, that they're not on edge wondering what's going to happen and anything, people worry about often dog interactions. And I've actually met a lot of people through our program who, they come in and we say, so how are your dogs with other dogs? And they say, oh my gosh, I've never taken our dogs off leash to play with other dogs because I'm afraid of what would happen. So that's an interesting thing, that people are so worried about bad things happening with dog interactions. And it's interesting to know why. I think there are a couple of reasons. Number one, dogs have a different system of communicating than we do. It's much more physical, and at times it can sound really scary. Dogs have big teeth, and they can do a lot of damage. And I think that's the big one right there. All those scary noises, are they going to lead to dogs using those big teeth or not? And I think that's a big worry. And, dog bites and attacks get totally overblown in the media. Everybody reads something about a dog bite or, heaven forbid, a dog fatality somewhere in North America. It's on the front page. It certainly goes up on Facebook and Twitter. And it seems like a big event, which it is. It's a sad event. But when you think about it, it's one dog. How many millions of dogs are there in Canada and US right now? But it does get overblown in the media, so we worry. And then thirdly, I think that we have pretty often unrealistic expectations of our dogs, every dog being a social butterfly. And I have to blame Disney for this, because almost every dog that shows up on Disney is a social butterfly. And when they aren't social butterflies, we think something's wrong with them. And I want to dispel that. So, if people can understand, dog levels of sociability and the nature of dog interactions, hopefully they'll become more comfortable and more accepting of some of the things they see in their own dogs. So, Celeste, we have questions here, right? What's the first one?
The first one is, shouldn't all dogs just naturally play together?
Yeah, just like all people play together.
Yeah. Play nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would
There's
be
the difference.
that would be a big issue with me. Anyway, so I have this chart that I downloaded from the Canine Enrichment people, Pet Harmony, and I really like this chart, and I might post a picture of it in the comments, and I will, of course, ascribe it to Emily and Allie. But it's an interesting chart. I'll just go through it here. So they've divided dogs into 4 sort of levels of sociability. And the first one is, I'm putting my glasses on to read this. The first one is dog social. And the social dogs who love all dogs, even the ones that get in their faces and are rude, annoying, only take up 10% of the dog population. So there you go. The Disney dogs are only 10%. So usually that's a very social adult or a puppy. The next group is dog tolerant. And these dogs get along with most dogs. They're generally tolerant of rude behavior. They're pretty calm on leash. They're cool, relaxed, good communication. Maybe not as insane about playing as the first group. 40%. All right. Next group is also 40%, and it's called the dog selective group. And these are dogs that have dog friends, but they're picky about new dogs. They see unfamiliar dogs on leash. They might find that a little bit stressful, and don't always cope with other dogs on leash or interacting with them. So these dogs need some guidance and some supervision. So that's a 40%. And the last group is 10%. And the reason I like Allie and Emily's chart is because they changed it. It's not here in my copy, but they used to call this dog aggressive. There's a lot of people that put these charts out and call it dog aggressive. And now they've changed it to solo dog, which I think is much more politically correct, more tactful. And they're 10%. And these are dogs who, just aren't into other dogs. They might be able to select 1 or 2 dog friends, but they're pretty sensitive even around those friends. And, quote, they may act like a jerk when triggered. Need lots of management and patience from their humans who they love more than dogs. And I think, Celeste, it's pretty easy to say that both you and I have a solo dog, right?
Yeah, it's hard because I was kind of thinking Penny fits into the third group because there are dogs that she can hang out with and be fine with, but she doesn't want to interact with them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As long as like they can be side by side and hanging out. Like I'm thinking of when our families get together and there's been a couple of new pups since Penny's been here and she's been fine with them as long as they don't want to play with her.
Yeah.
Like she's happy to have them sit beside her. That's fine. But she doesn't want to interact.
That's right. Yeah. I pretty much have the most. Sorry?
So it's tricky because she's kind of like between a 3 and a 4.
It is. And I actually think I have one that's beyond solo.
Yes. I would agree with that.
Because she doesn't want 1 or 2 dog friends. She doesn't even want to have anything to do with the other 2 that she lives with and has lived with for 8 years and used to play with. She wants no other dog on the planet. So we might have to come up with a new politically correct fifth version for the 0.001 percentile that I own.
I think maybe she thinks she's a person.
Maybe.
And she doesn't want to have anything to do with the lesser beings.
Maybe. But, I also was thinking of our agility classes because, here's an example. We have we have a lot of agility classes, but I have a class on Monday night. And it isn't breed specific, but, 2 labs and border cross Aussie. Mm-hmm. And all the dogs on all 3 of these classes are mature dogs. They're way past 2 years of age. And those 3 play like maniacs out on the field after class. They just love to play. The play that they demonstrate is pretty terrifying for people who don't know what play is, but they play. So there's a very social group. And then on Sunday, the class that Rosie and I run in, they've been together for a long time, and they all hang out together after class because that is our wine and agility class, and we hang out together. But even though they all hang out together and they're perfectly fine with each other, they don't interact. They're actually quite cute because there's 5 of them, and they just move as a group from person to person soliciting food. But if there's 5 dogs sitting in front of any one of us at any given time, and they're all getting cookies tossed to them, and there are no issues in that group. So I watched actually Casey last week take a cookie right out from under Rosie's nose, and if that happened in my house, Rosie would not be happy, but she let Casey do it. So there's another level of sociability. And then we have the Wednesday night group. And that's an interesting group because at one point, I think there were 4 leash reactive dogs in that class. And so no interaction whatsoever with these guys. And they're actually during class, well, one is out there running, the others are in X-pens behind horse blankets for visual barrier. So those guys are not going to get together and hang out after class, which is fine. All of those dogs in all 3 classes are fantastic dogs. They are all well-educated dogs. They're great with people. They're able to focus on their owners when they're out running an agility course. The leash reactive ones are out there running. They're not paying any attention to the other dogs because they're off leash. But they're all just different in their social choices. And that is exactly how it is, just like humans. We are all different in the choices that we make socially. And so dogs are the same, and we have to let them make choices. And our whole thing in the last couple of Facebook Lives is about choices for dogs. This is one more area where your dog gets to choose how social they want to be. You can't force it. It would be like somebody forcing me to try to be a social butterfly, and it would fail badly because it's just not in me. So. So the interesting thing is we see, because you and I are down on the field with all of those puppies in our play group, we see it starting in the puppy groups. You can see that some are, some are rolling around in a giant ball, and others are just cruising the periphery of the field looking for food or anything else. And a couple of them are just sitting in front of their owners, waiting for something to do. So even it starts in puppyhood. All right. So it's not just about the adult dogs. So what's our next question, Celeste?
When is the best time to introduce play?
Okay. Yeah. Well, that follows right in.
It does.
Puppy play groups, because the magic socialization period is the time to deal with any fears of other dogs. It's just the same as we do with kids. We can teach puppies good play skills. We're not trying to create super social dogs, but we are trying to instill good play habits in them. But there are 2 cardinal rules. The puppies must feel safe. So if they don't want to come out in the field and play with the other puppies on any given day, then they're totally welcome to hang out outside the fence, maybe with another dog or 2. If Jack's there, Jack's out with them. Jack is the Walmart greeter of the puppy world for us. And he often goes out to visit the nervous puppies. So, they're fine with him. But it's their choice. Even if Jack's too much, we don't force it. So they have to feel safe, and they have to feel it's their choice to interact. We don't want them to be afraid, but how much they interact is their choice. We just don't want the fear, because once you pass that out of that socialization period, it is much more difficult, as we know, to eradicate that fear in dogs. So we don't want that happening. And I think if we start puppy group, the other good reason is that it's easier for the owners as well. You know, owners can be out there. They're not going to worry quite as much about puppies doing real damage to each other. You know, we've seen the puppies get into a bit of you know, some scraps out there in the field, but the general response to that is that people tend to be pretty relaxed about that. You know, we even laugh at times when we see it, and you know, it's much easier to step in if it gets out of control. We can interrupt them and pull them out if they're bullying the other puppies, and we can call them out, you know, reinforce them, let them go back. Eventually, they do learn to self-interrupt. So I think it's more relaxing for people to, you know, start getting their puppies involved in play than it is to think about doing it with their adult dogs. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what if the puppy doesn't want to play?
Well, again, we can get them over that. We haven't, you know, I think you and I haven't seen one that started fearful that didn't end up out on the field.
Yeah.
You know, we just give them time and safety and choice, and if we have to, we do some counter conditioning. But puppies have those flexible little brains that allow them to, or enable them to move past those fearful moments and start to play. So, you know, we tend to run our play groups longer. Actually, we extend them beyond the class 6 weeks for everybody, because we want them to keep practicing those skills. If they practice, they get better at them. So definitely, yeah, it can all be sorted out. So,
can my older dog be socialized?
Oh, well, that's an interesting one.
A fun one.
Yeah. People call me all the time and say, well, my dog, you know, is 8 months old, 9 months old, or a year and a half, and they need to be socialized. And sometimes I'm not sure what they mean. A lot of the time, they are talking about learning to get on with other dogs. And that is, it is trickier, it is tougher, possibly doable. First of all, it depends on whether your dog is fearful, because after that, you know, after 6 months or so, it's really hard to eradicate fear in a dog. It is really, really tough. So I don't think there is a massive possibility that a fearful dog is going to want to go out and play with a lot of other dogs. You and I both know that, you know, because we have one each. You know, and I don't see that happening. And it also depends on the dog's age, because we know that as dogs get older, as they reach social maturity, and not every dog, this doesn't apply to every dog. I know Goldens and Labs that are, you know, well up in years that are still out there playing like maniacs with anything on 4 legs. But there is generally, dogs play less. I noticed my dogs, definitely when they were around somewhere between 18 months and 2 years, they play less. They become more selective about who they play with. They only play with a few choice dogs. And they become much less tolerant of dogs who don't have manners and dogs who get in their space. So I know I certainly noticed that with my guys. What about, well, how old is Gimli now? Gimli's...
He'll be 3 soon.
Okay.
I mean, the question that comes to mind here is, like, why do you want your dog to play with other dogs if they're older? Like, is it for you or is it for them?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer. That is a good question. You know, I don't know. I think maybe people kind of wake up one day and think, oh, my dog doesn't have any friends. That's so sad. Possibly. You know, even I don't know about you and Penny. I think you and I've had conversations about this, in that you know, I had three dogs who were best friends for like 18 months. And then it all went down the tubes. And now I have a dog who like is never going to be with the other two. And I think, you know, occasionally that's really sad. Mostly I think it's sad when I have to take them for twice as many walks a day. But
Yeah.
I think it's a bit sad for Maddie too. And then I kind of smack myself in the head and come to my senses and go, Maddie's perfectly happy. She doesn't need those other dogs. She doesn't want to be with those other dogs. She's perfectly happy. You know, Brett and I always say this is a dog who would just love to live in a house with us without any other dogs.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's not missing out on anything, but occasionally I think, oh, it'd be nice if she had a friend, and then I come to my senses. I don't know, maybe people just think it's sad if their dog doesn't have supposedly a friend to play with. I don't know. Well, we've talked about this with Penny too, is that at times you felt sort of bad because she doesn't get out to go off and do things as much as other dogs do, because she's not, you know, she's not terribly happy to be around other dogs out in public, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, but that's, again, I think my expectation or my wish of what I want her to be like, when sometimes you have to just realize it's not the dog that's in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And here's something I'll say, which is like totally sacrilegious. You know, part of socialization for me, and I think for a lot of trainers, and I know that behaviorists are big on this too, is that a big part of socialization is that your dog, your puppy, can look at another dog that's out in the world, see another dog coming down the street and go, oh yeah, there's another dog. That's nice, but no big deal. I'm just going to pay attention to you, my owner, instead. And we're just going to walk along, because we know that the pro-social dogs can get frustrated if they can't meet every dog in the world. If you don't work on disengagement from other dogs, that can be an issue as well. And, you know, up in the arena, there's so many of us that, like, you know, how many people come here for agility, is that we all prefer that our dogs are okay with other dogs, but that they really don't need to go and interact with them, that they can disengage with them and pay attention to us, which is what you need to run agility. Yeah. So, you know, I think all of the agility people are quite happy that I've never had any, other than the one crazy play group, I've never really had many agility people ask me if their dogs could play with other dogs after class. It doesn't seem to be a big issue for any of us, you know. So, you know, I think if your dog needs other dogs and they want to play with other dogs, they should have that opportunity. That's why there are daycares and dog parks, but it is not necessary for every dog to go to a dog park. That's like me going to a party. Oh God, thank you, no. You know, same thing again. You know, there's lots of people that don't want to hang out in a large group. You know.
So I'm gonna jump in with a question there.
Okay.
I'm just gonna scan.
You or just somebody else?
No, I'm scanning to see if this question's already on our list, but okay, no, it isn't. So my question to that is, how do you know that your dog, let's say you have an older dog that you've adopted from the shelter, how do you know that your dog wants to play with other dogs? Like you're saying, if your dog wants to play with other dogs, you should give it the opportunity.
Yes.
So for somebody who doesn't know what their dog likes or doesn't like, and I'm asking this because I had a question like this week that came my way. Okay. How do you know? How do you test that?
You can introduce them, which I think feeds into our next question, which is if somebody has an older dog that they want to introduce to other dogs, how do you do that? Because that gets more difficult and it gets scarier for owners to put older dogs into play for the first time. And to be honest, we don't even do it here because we're just, our thing is about teaching dogs disengagement, and running agility, disengagement in the gaze programs. But I know that there are trainers out there who do specialize in play groups for older dogs. So I am not the world's expert on how to introduce older dogs. They would probably know more than I do. But what I would do, because if the play escalates into something that is not play, older dogs are much hard, not older dog, but yeah, older dogs are usually bigger than puppies and often harder to difficult. It's more difficult to manage if it goes down the tubes. If I was going to introduce a dog that I didn't know to another dog, first thing I would suggest the owner does is teach the dog to be happy wearing a muzzle, because if you muzzle, everybody's anxiety level goes down dramatically because the dog can't do damage. It might not be, its response might not be great, but they're not going to be able to chomp another dog. And the dog has to be happy wearing the muzzle. You have to do it. You have to condition them to be okay with it. Maddie's conditioned to be okay with the muzzle. She doesn't care whether it's on or off. You can't just slap it on the dog and go meet another dog, because if the dog's never had a muzzle on and they're not happy about having it on their face, and then you immediately meet another dog, you've already got a dog who's a bit stressed out. So you're down the hole already. So definitely you want to work up to that gradually and counter condition it, or condition them to like it. Not counter condition, but condition them to like it. You can also be a bit more gradual and a bit more conservative about what they do together the first few times. Can they go for parallel walks together? And we're certainly not talking about leash reactive dogs at this point. That's a whole different thing. But if dogs aren't leash reactive, can you walk them at a bit of a distance, together, parallel, lots of positive reinforcement for being there and hanging out with the other dog, but not necessarily overreacting. I always suggest people do that first, because again, it makes people feel better. To just do it cold turkey, I think most people's anxiety levels might be off the charts, unless it's somebody that really wants it and is used to doing it. So that gradual approach makes the humans feel calmer, which also helps the dogs feel calmer about it. And, if you're going to introduce your dog to another dog and your dog has no experience, or you don't know what their experience has been, the best thing you can try and do, with the muzzle on for sure, is to try and find your dog a bit of a bomb-proof dog park dog. Because, certainly dog park dogs have had so many experiences and have dealt with so many different dogs, or a daycare dog who, those dogs are used to being in a group of dogs, are used to dealing with everything. They probably have pretty good play skills. They're pretty resilient if anything happens, although your dog is wearing the muzzle. And they're just, they're not going to get as wound up if your dog acts like an idiot. So that's a great candidate. So those would be my three whatever you call it, my three recommendations for meeting on leash if you never had a dog. Do that before, the boxer, Celeste. What was the boxer's name? Your friends, your two, the two ladies.
Yeah, Tyler.
Mm-hmm. And it was unfortunate because Tyler hadn't been off leash with other dogs, and we took him down to the field and we went through the whole process, and Tyler was great, and he did very well. Oh, that's the other thing, is keep the sessions really short. And expect the dog who's meeting for the first time might just be a little over top in the beginning. So, wait till they calm down a little bit, wait till they're okay, keep it short. And we did keep it short with Tyler, and he was going to be able to do really well, but he tore his cruise ship. And so we felt really bad about that. So I think he would have been great, but just had that unfortunate accident. And I don't remember whether that was his first one. I think that was his second cruise ship.
Yeah, he's torn both at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's doable if you really, really want it. But, you know, your dog might look at the other dog and react in a way that indicates they don't want anything to do with another dog, or they might just ignore them. You know, you won't know until you try it, you know, really.
So
I wouldn't
I have
go into a dog park, that's for sure. Sorry?
Oh no, never mind. I'm skipping ahead again. Ignore me.
No, okay. All right. No, I wouldn't do that to you. You know, if you're talking about, I'll touch on it, leash reactive dogs, because a lot of people, when they come to walks at work, one of the questions is, when will my dog be able to meet another dog on leash? And we of course, you know, I'm not going to go through that because we've been through that, and you know, in the other Facebook lives, people can go track those down. But the owners are also afraid to let leash reactive dogs play off leash because they look so aggressive on leash. And I know that is a big fear. And a lot of them have said to me, oh my God, I could never do it. I couldn't deal with it. But you could follow the guidelines I just talked about. And a big factor there is whether your dog is leash reactive because they're afraid or because they're frustrated.
Right.
And if they're frustrated, they're just frustrated because they can't go play with other dogs on leash.
Yeah.
So they should be fine. And to be honest, if you can find opportunities for them to go and play off leash, it might lessen their frustration on leash because they would get that enrichment somewhere else. It's just they're desperate for that social enrichment. I actually know the interesting thing is that that Wednesday night agility class that I was just talking about, I think all of those dogs can go to dog parks and play off leash successfully with other dogs, or at least they have friends that they can go and play with. So yeah, it doesn't work in agility because they're on leash while they're waiting for their turn. So that's why we have the issue in the agility program. But all of those dogs are really good off leash with other dogs. So, you know, people shouldn't be afraid. Just be conservative and introduce gradually and use the safety precautions and you know, see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
So, how do we tell if they're playing or fighting?
Oh, yeah.
Similar looking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason it looks like that, because that's come up in my puppy, the last couple of Zooms. I ended up doing all my Zooms last week on puppy play because, of course, they're all out there, you know, on puppy play. And everybody's saying, well, what do I do when they start to bark and growl and snap and snarl? So that is interesting. Most of the videos that I saw, I was not, because people, they all sent me videos, which was great. I wasn't worried about anything that I saw in those videos because play can sound really quite alarming to people who are not used to it. Yeah. Definitely the agility lab class on Monday night, we just laugh when we watch them because we say that if we videotaped it and put it up, it would be like a sequel to Cujo. The dogs are having a great time. It looks like that a lot because there's a reason for dogs playing. When they were wild and free predators before they became captive pet dogs, puppy play was a rehearsal for killing your food and protecting it from your competitors. So if you didn't have those skills of, you know, warning them off and being able to use your teeth and having good jaw strength and being able to, you know, dissect stuff and pinning and everything else, you weren't going to survive. So there was a real reason for puppies to practice all of those skills in play. And if you think about that, it helps you understand it a little bit more. And then the other reason I think people have a hard time differentiating play from something more serious is because again, everybody's worried about their dog being, not socially appropriate. And so people tend to look for the bad stuff. They look for the snarling or the growling, or, the dog getting ticked off with the other dog. But what I have been taught is that you look for the good stuff. Because the other stuff is just usually a lot of sound. So what is the good stuff? Well, you definitely want to see them bouncing around. You want to see those bouncy, wiggly bodies. And we see all this out in the field all the time. And most of the time when they're playing, they've got what we call play face, which is those goofy, silly looks on their faces. Their mouths are open. And, you see them offering play bows to each other. We're always looking for the play bows. And there's a few other things they do. You see them taking turns. I always watch for turn taking with the puppies or the older dogs. You don't want to see one dog who is always pinned under the other one, or who's always being the one chased. You want to see that it's a bit more democratic. They're taking turns. Even the activities, if it's always chase, 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 it's not usually just one activity. Puppies, they have a attention span of a flea, so they're often changing up the activities, which is a healthy way to play. And the big one is that if you watch them when they are, grabbing each other, biting each other, pinning each other, they're not really biting hard. If they bite hard, the other one will yelp and walk away. But I don't even see that very often with the puppies.
No, it's more like a mouthing.
Yeah, my favorite is when they're too tired to play any longer and they're just lying on the ground, nose to nose, going. Nobody's doing anything. They're just like, I'm just chewing on your nose and you're chewing on my nose. So you want to look for all of that rather than focusing on the growling and the pinning, because it distracts you from the good stuff. So. They sound aggressive, they might look aggressive, but just try and ignore that and look at the other stuff.
I think one of my favorite things when we do the puppy play groups is the shock and surprise when people hear their dog growl and snarl for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, she's never made that noise before."
I know.
But they don't do it for people.
I know. I think Chris sent me something. You know who I'm talking about. And I think he said to me, I just wanted to pick him up and carry him out of it. And I go, no, he's fine. He's fine. He sounds so funny. It's so cute when you're listening to the puppies growl and try and sound like big dogs. I think it's adorable.
It is. But it's shocking if it's your sweet little fluff ball that you're not used to hearing that from.
Yeah, but we've seen it down the field. Once we explain people, they think it's a riot. So
it becomes funny very fast.
Yeah, and that's what should happen. That's what should happen for sure. Okay. So
what do I do if I think my dog isn't having a good time?
Wow, that's a good one.
It is actually.
That is a good one. We do two things. First of all, okay, let me go from the what do I do if my puppy isn't having a good time. It really is about your puppy being fearful, and most owners are pretty good at seeing whether their puppies are fearful, because a fearful puppy will often try and hide behind, the owner's feet. They'll run away. There's some obvious signs. Sometimes there's some non-obvious signs. And not every puppy reads them. We see a lot of puppies just slightly averting their head, which is a sign that they don't want to play. Whether the other puppy reads it, or not is always interesting. But first of all, I think people should become very familiar with dog body language and what fear looks like in dogs. And there's a lot of good videos out there. There's a lot of, I'm going to post a couple of videos in the comment section after this. There's some videos of dog play and puppy play, and they're very good. Jane Sigworth, who was in the academy with me, she has beautiful videos. And then there's another group, Beacon. But I'll post the links to all of those if people are really want to see. And you know, there's puppy play and there's dog play, so people can look at both. So if you aren't sure, I would always err on the side of caution if you think your puppy is not having a good time, because there is something that you can do to test that, and it's called a consent test. And we do tons of them down on the field, and we teach them to all our puppy people. So if puppy number one is not, looks like they are uncomfortable with puppy number two, what you do is you take puppy number two away, and you wait to see what puppy number one does. And if puppy number one walks away, then you know that they want to play with puppy number two. If they go back to puppy number two, then heck, let them play. So what we're doing with that consent test is we are giving the puppy choice. And, you know, we're saying to that puppy, I'm sorry, are you feeling a little bit nervous? Is this too much for you? Are you uncomfortable? We'll take that other puppy away. What do you want to do? And they'll tell you, which is great. I think that's the coolest thing. I love consent tests. So if you have the nervous puppy or the puppy that looks fearful, you ask the other owner just to hold on to their dog for a minute and see what yours is going to do. And if you're on the other side of it, where you think your puppy might be a bit of a bully with the other one looks uncomfortable, take your puppy away, call them away, and give the other dog choice. Yeah, it's, and you know, some dogs and some puppies can just be a little bit over the top for others, and some can be a little bit of a bully. So you can interrupt that as well. We do that all the time down the field. If I see one that is way too much for the group, or, you know, the other couple of puppies, I'll put that one on a long line. And whenever we see it escalating, I will just call that puppy away, or, you know, move it away on the long line. It's not a punishment, so I reinforce them for coming away, and then they get to go back when they've calmed down a bit. So, and we've found, because puppies learn really fast, we've seen it on the field, that eventually they kind of learn to self-interrupt themselves. We've seen that happen.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, what we see, what people call the bullying, it's usually just the over arousal, and they need a little breather. Yeah, absolutely. For puppies, it's mostly just over arousal. I know there are some older dogs that can bully, but with puppies, it's just too much. You know, they have no impulse control. So, you know, they get to the point where they do self-interrupt. And I thought that was really neat. When I first started doing that, I didn't think puppies would get to that thought process, but they do quite well. So, you know, the thing is, if you've got two puppies playing and two owners, everybody has to feel comfortable. It's not just the puppies. So if you're not sure, we tell people just keep doing consent tests, do consent tests. And all of our puppy owners are really, really practicing these days on calling their dogs out of play anyway. We're really pushing that, not just for a consent test, but let's just work on calling your dog back to you, get them back to you, reinforce them, and let them go back to play. So, you know, they're doing a lot of that, and they're doing a lot of consent tests, which I think is both those ideas are really great. Yeah. Well, that's great for future recall too.
Yes. So, yeah, what's the next one?
The next one. What do I do if I think my dog and the other one are getting too aggressive with each other?
Okay. And we're talking about adult dogs here. That's the question that I've gotten from people about adult dogs. So ideally, you should do what I just talked about with the puppies that are practicing. You really should be able to call your dog away from dog play. I know that Rosie's the one that's always in the classes and not that. I know I can call her away from other dogs, and I know that I can actually call her out of a scrap with another dog. She does not initiate scraps, but she has been the recipient of not aggression, but just a play scrap at times. And I remember one day she was pinned under this other dog who was quite a bit bigger, and people were like flipping out. I wasn't worried. It wasn't a big deal. And I couldn't hold the other dog. It was so strong. So finally I just looked down at her. She was underneath. I said, Rosie, go to your bed. And she kind of looked at me and she dragged herself up from under and went and lay down on her bed so I could hang on to the other dog. That's a cool thing. And you know, takes some work, but it is a good thing to do, because in an adult scrap, and you know what? Well, okay, I'll get to that in a second. In an adult dog fight, and we want to talk about what a dog fight is, you do not want to step in and grab your dog or the other dog, unless they are on long lines and you can get hold of the long lines, because when owners step in and try to restrain their dog or pull their dog out, it's just like pulling on the leash of a leash reactive dog. You know, here's Michael Shikashu again. It's like pulling the trigger on the gun. Yeah. And every time people have stepped in, they have gotten injured or bitten. Not every time, I shouldn't say every time, but there is a high likelihood that you will get nailed on a redirected bite. And that's the last thing we want to have happen. And it doesn't always solve the issue. If you got two big, strong dogs, you're not going to do well getting them apart anyway. So I know when we had the big fight here with Rosie and Maddie, that was many years ago, but that was the bad one. And I had to step in because I knew that fight was not going to stop or end well. I had no choice, but Annie jumped in with me and bit me by accident. So, you know, I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't see any way out of it. But most of the time, you are better off not stepping in, because it is what we call ritualized aggression. So the thing is, when people see a dog fight, it looks horrific. It sounds horrific. You know, but dogs get into dog fights that don't go anywhere a lot of the time. We had, like, Annie and Rosie are like mother and daughter. They've lived together for 8 years, but they get into the occasional scrap. We had one last summer. We had our bubble over. Brett was in the house getting the food, and the two of them went at it in the backyard. And I knew what had caused it, but I also knew it wasn't an issue. And I normally wouldn't have stepped in, but they're both just recovering from knee surgery. So I'm trying to pull them apart because I was worried about them injuring their knees. So I'm not pulling them apart going, oh my God, they're going to kill each other. I'm pulling them apart going, I can't afford this. Like, it's just too expensive, guys. You got to stop. And people were hysterical, and they were throwing dinner forks and napkins at them and everything else. Normally, if they both had just had knee surgery, I wouldn't have bothered, because what they were doing was arguing. They were yelling at each other. And that's what people forget when they see a dog fight. They immediately think, oh my God, the dogs are going to kill each other. It very rarely happens. I'm not to say it doesn't happen. And I know that in my house could be one of those exceptions, because I don't think that the fight would end, because Annie and Maddie are way past ever just having an argument. But for most dogs, it is an argument. They're yelling at each other. And that's how dogs argue and yell at each other. And we've seen a lot of horrific spats I refuse to call them fights anymore. Spats here, sometimes in the agility field, because it's pretty high arousal. And I have not seen any significant injury done to dogs here. I have seen, a couple minor nicks on the face because dogs are going at it face to face. It's almost an accidental thing. And there's a reason for that, because again, when they were wild predators and they got into a fight over resources, territory, females, food, whatever, if they fought to an injurious level, there aren't any vets out there to fix you. So chances are, if you got injured, you could die of infection or blood loss or whatever. And you see all those things on National Geographic where the two heads of the herds are like beating the crap out of each other with their antlers or their horns, or you see the lions fighting. We saw that in Africa. We saw the lions fighting and looked just like the dogs. But they separate and there was no damage done. It's basically who's going to intimidate the other one. Mm-hmm. And that's what we see here. But it is really, really hard for people to feel comfortable and not afraid of that. I used to be terrified. I used to be terrified of the thought of it happening here, and I used to be terrified when it happened. And now I just kind of go, no, they're okay. Just let it go, let it go. I'm not getting involved, and you guys just call them. But there are things you could do. We have a water bucket in the arena. Toss the water bucket on them. Make a sound, clap your hands, yell. Throw something on the ground that's going to make a sound. I have an air horn that I carry with me in the forest. If I think there's coyotes or there is a German Shepherd behind us that is never controlled, if I see anything coming, I'm going to use the air horn, because that's probably pretty effective, even just a citronella spray. So there are ways to break it up without people getting in the middle of it and getting injured and escalating. But a lot of it is just, it's just dogs arguing, but that's hard for your average pet owner to understand, Yeah.
All right. Are there situations in which dogs shouldn't interact?
Yes. My house. My house. Not Annie and Rosie. We just let them go, knock it off. But definitely Maddie and either of the other two, because there have been injurious fights. And one of the criteria that I was taught in Jean Donaldson's Academy is, if the dog has delivered injurious bites to other dogs that sent those dogs to the vet for stitches and antibiotics, that's a management issue, and we're not going to work on teaching that dog to play with other dogs, which is why there will never be play between Maddie or interaction between Maddie and my other dogs, because there were very injurious bites. And I'm not talking again about nicks on the face or whatever.
No, when you say stitches, that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a bit more serious. I would not ask a fearful dog to learn to play with other dogs, to interact in play with other dogs if they were afraid, if they were showing fear, because they are going to react, because fearful dogs want to increase distance from other dogs. So most of them are quite happy not to play with other dogs, and if they are fearful, and we need to respect that. And the other two are big and small. Because that if you have a big dog and they're playing with a little dog and they step on the little dog or cause the little dog to squeak, or any dog, is afraid of the other dog, it does trigger the predatory sequence. And predatory sequence is not aggression, it's just about food acquisition, because dogs as predators are genetically encoded to go after something vulnerable. So little dogs squeak. I've seen triggered. I've even seen Rosie triggered once with a smaller dog that squeaked. And it happened with Penny once in the arena too. And we've both seen our dogs do it. It doesn't mean they're going to do it all the time. No. It just means in that situation that was triggered. So any dog can be triggered that way. So big dog can pick up the small dog, shake it and kill it. in a heartbeat or injure it badly. And the other one, the big one lately, is puppies and older dogs. So you've got a bit of big on small there, because usually the older dogs are bigger. But if you remember, we said that older dogs are often become less tolerant as they mature, as they get older, and puppies are not very good at reading warning signals. So I'm hearing a lot lately about puppies meeting adult dogs and being bitten, not badly enough to end up at the vet, but a bad enough experience to leave those puppies fearful.
Yes.
And this is not what we want to do. That's what, well, Maddie didn't get bitten, but she had an incident with another dog. She was right on the fence of socialization, and getting mowed down by 2 other dogs inadvertently just knocked her off on the wrong side of the fence in terms of dog-dog social skills. So if you want your puppy to play with an older dog, people assume older dogs, oh, they'll be fine with puppies. You want to pick one that you know really well, and who is very tolerant, like those park dogs. And you want to be careful to pull the puppy away when it starts getting obnoxious, because the puppy doesn't, you don't want your puppy to learn that they can be obnoxious to older dogs, because they're not all tolerant. So, you know, those are the exceptions, you know, but definitely some good criteria here. So I think I'm out of answers. I think we're out of questions.
Yeah, well, there was a couple on the that popped up in the comments.
Okay.
I don't know if do we have time for it though? Or do you want to just answer them separately?
I will answer some. Do you want to hit me with one? We've got 4 minutes left here. We're usually told our tech supervisor tells us to get out under an hour. So we got a minute or two. You want to hit me?
Okay, so there's a dog park one. How do you bring a dog to a dog park? So this is actually, to me, a good question, because if you're talking about introducing your dog to situations, the dog parks, you go, you unleash them, and they take off, kind of thing.
Well,
so is that how you should do it? Yeah. How should you introduce them?
Some take off, some hide. I would be more inclined to introduce my dog for the first time to a smaller play group and 1 or 2 other dogs, possibly in the neighborhood, to get a read on where they're at with other dogs. Because again, if you take a dog to the dog park and they're fearful and something happens, that they yelp or squeak, I don't like that scenario. I don't want to take my dog to the dog park and have them so overexcited because they've never met another dog that they just lose their mind and create chaos. Mm-hmm. There's all levels of sociability at dog parks. Some dogs play, some dogs, would prefer to be totally alone. Some dogs just cruise around. I would like to have an idea of where my dog fit on that continuum before I put them into a dog park, for sure. Yeah.
I would also add to find a dog park that has the big dog pen and the small dog pen.
Absolutely.
So that they're in appropriate sized zones.
Yeah, but I would definitely be testing on a smaller sample of the population before. Yeah. So I had a good idea. And then I would not take my eyes off my dog at the dog park anyway.
No.
You and I never take our eyes off our dogs. Most of my clients don't either. That's another one as well. Keep your eye out. Yeah. Is there one more that I can answer quickly?
There was one about reading of behaviors. Instant aggression, fear. Is it always fear? So in this scenario, she's talking about dogs that kind of just, if they're off leash, they just charge.
No, not every dog who exhibits aggressive behavior is fearful. And that is where you have to be pretty good at reading body language. So there's tons of stuff out there on body language. As I said, I'll put some videos up because fear and aggression can look very similar, and sometimes it's very subtle differences. So it's tough. That's really tough for your average pet owner to tell whether. I would like to think that most of the time I think it is fear aggression. But there are a few moments or a few incidents when it might not be totally fear aggression. Again, that's knowing your dog. If you've got a fearful dog, you can pretty much assume it's fear aggression. Okay, so we are totally running out of time here. I will answer the rest of them in the comments. We will put up the videos. And thank you very much for everybody for hanging out with us today. We'll be back with another one next week. And if you have any more questions, definitely put them in the comments, and I will do my best to try and answer them today. Thank you. Thanks, Celeste. It was fun. Take care, everybody.